Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Deadpool and Wolverine shatter box office records, but not gay enough for woke critics. Yes, that is a real headline. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. I first saw the story from Bleeding Fool on Twitter. Deadpool getting pegged by his girlfriend in the first movie was never going to be enough for some people. And from DigitalSpy.com, Deadpool and Wolverine could and should have been so much gayer. A multiverse of man juice this isn't. Well, who needs that? I mean, some people I'm sure are into it, but come on, it's a movie. You're supposed to have fun. Let's not get too weird about the whole thing. From The Hollywood Reporter, box office, Deadpool and Wolverine heads for record-smashing $195 million to $205 million opening weekend after a massive $96 million Friday. The movie's going to make a lot of money, but it's not making everyone happy. Why? Because there was gay jokes and gay humor in it, and not everybody is cool with that, because if you're going to do that, you need to show all sorts of things happening between characters that not everybody actually wants to see. This article does have spoilers in it, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want it ruined for you, and you want to be surprised by different events in the movie, don't listen to this video just yet. But come on, just listen to it. What's the big deal? It'll be fun anyway. The reason this movie is going to be a hit is because it's fun. They stayed on brand for Deadpool and Wolverine. They stayed on brand for what classic Marvel was. And they gave people what they expected, a good time when they went to see the movie. And that's exactly the quotient of what you need to have a hit movie with branded content like the Marvel brand. People will go see this movie more than once now. Just like the original Joker, people went to see that movie several times. That money adds up quick. Especially with special format theaters like IMAX, where you pay even more money to see a movie. This article's pretty ridiculous, so I'm going to do the best I can with it. And I'm doing that for you. Ahead of Wade Wilson's return to the big screen, various promos suggested that Deadpool and Wolverine was going to save the MCU. That the merc with a mouth is in fact Marvel Jesus. All the data suggests that this might actually turn out to be true, financially speaking, but Wade also embodies Jesus in a surprisingly chaste, nigh-on celibate way, despite what the marketing might have you believe. Based off the posters alone, you might assume that Deadpool and Wolverine are in fact extremely gay for each other. Or at least Deadpool is extremely gay for Wolverine. This is humor. This is just an absurdity. That's why they put that in the movie. Deadpool is not extremely gay for Wolverine. He never was. Wolverine is not interested in being gay with Deadpool. They're just being silly because Deadpool will make a joke about anything. Deadpool will make fun of anything. And back in the 1990s, when Deadpool was created and first published as a comic book, really all that kind of just mocking and silliness, and that's how society would incorporate new ideas. They wouldn't outright exclude them necessarily, but if it was something that people weren't necessarily that interested in, but they're like, okay, this is part of our reality, they would make jokes about it, which actually makes people more comfortable about it. That's the way to pursue actually a progressive agenda. Let people have some fun with things that are new and different. And those kinds of jokes were not only in Deadpool. Seinfeld had a famous episode in the 1990s where they were talking about being gay and then following it up with a comment like, well, not that there's anything wrong with that. Just saying that you're not for something or against something. You're just talking about something, and there's something funny about things that are just different and not mainstream. But if it wasn't for that kind of sense of humor, it never would have been more mainstreamed in society. Does that make it good or bad? I can't really speak to that, just to say humor is not necessarily the enemy. It's a way that we explore new ideas in context with what our current belief systems are. He continues, the very first poster put the pair's masks together in a broken heart necklace with the caption, "Come together," followed by another where Deadpool caressed Wolverine's claws in a riff on material from 2017's Logan. Which, of course, is very funny marketing. It's silly. It's not serious. It's not anyone that thought this was going to be a love story, a gay or a straight love story or whatnot, of course it's not. It's Deadpool. Then there's the Wolverine popcorn bucket, which Deadpool also caressed in a promo where hot liquid butter oozed and drizzled all over the giant opening where his mouth should be. It was giving only fans in Marvel form, a multiverse of man juice, if you will, but there's a problem. Now, I'm not crazy about that term personally, but from a marketing standpoint, that is a pretty effective term. Both Wade and Logan are canonically queer and sexually fluid in the comics. Of course, the agenda pushing has happened in Marvel Comics where everyone's gay, everyone's bi. It's not canon, it's not on brand, it's complete silliness. None of this belonged with these characters. None of the creators who started with these characters envisioned them this way. It's just them pushing an agenda. They've been pushing agendas in the comics now for several years. So any crazy ideas that they want to put into the comics, they can say, oh, well, it's canon now, and then try to push it into the movies, which is where they came up with Ms. Marvel in the first place, where they came up with a focus on Captain Marvel in the first place. All these kinds of concepts and ideas that nobody cares about. It's just about corrupting superheroes. So you don't have male power fantasies anymore. You don't have cool, strong male heroes. He continues, no matter how much bigots might want to argue otherwise, allusions to that in the marketing just amounted to a joke. Yeah, it is a joke. It's funny. It doesn't mean that people don't accept people that like people that way or have those sexual preferences or whatever. It just means, yes, it is a joke in the marketing material. And yes, it is a joke in this comic book movie story. Though for this author, he says it was a tedious homophobic joke at that. That wasn't the intention, but that's how it still came across anyway. The marketing equivalent of pointing at male affection and sniggering the words LOL gay, it's extremely 90s. Yes, he is exactly as I just said. This notion that men loving other men is a punchline, regardless of the intentions behind it. This isn't the first time Marvel or Disney have failed in this regard. Time and time again, they've hyped up queer characters without actually devoting time or energy to them on screen. Marvel has burned its franchise to the ground to try to support the DEI LGBT agenda. It's getting resuscitated now because this movie happened to be something that was in development and wasn't as affected as the other Marvel movies because it was part of the Fox studio. So it kind of had its own momentum and they hadn't got to destroying all the Fox properties just yet. It's like a riddle of old. What do a lesbian Cyclops cop from Onward, the movie from Pixar, an awkward director cameo in Avengers Endgame, and a blink and you'll miss it kiss in a galaxy far, far away from Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker at Lucasfilm, what do they all have in common? They each represent a so-called first for Disney in queer representation, yet Strange World, which was another massive failure, and Phastos from Eternal's side, Eternals also being a really badly performing Marvel movie. Most of these big moments are just that, a moment, or even worse, they're described as queer in interviews, yet aren't depicted as such in the movies themselves. Same thing with Thor's Valkyrie or Anika and Io in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. You would think this author would be more concerned with the fact that the movie titled Black Panther doesn't actually have a focus on Black Panther in the movie. It's a sequel movie to a character that basically doesn't exist in the movie. That's not really a sequel. It was the world of Wakanda, and that's what it should have been called if that's what they wanted to do, so they weren't lying to the people who were going to see the movie. I get that Chadwick Boseman died, and he was pretty damn good as Black Panther. You can't create a title of a movie that doesn't represent what the movie actually is. Could Deadpool and Wolverine have been any different? Has Disney actually managed to follow through on all that homoerotic marketing? Although there's a tad more nuance going on here than you might expect from the company that gave us a Wolverine fleshlight. Don't ask. It all starts predictably enough with the usual jokes, Deadpool dancing to NSYNC, Deadpool rubbing the bone he shoved into a soldier's groin in an inappropriate way. But then the TVA show up outside his door and suddenly Wade's getting ready for a gangbang despite not being, quote, the world's most natural bottom. His words, not the author's. Pegging jokes are par for the course in this franchise. But who would have guessed that bottoming itself would ever arch its way into a Marvel movie? Or that Deadpool would later crush on Thor to the point that he even wakes up dreaming about those golden locks and unwieldy Hemsworth biceps. And the way Deadpool lusted after Colossus in the previous movie can still be brushed off as him simply effing with the man instead of actually trying to F him. This time around, though, moments like this combine to form a slightly more defined version of Wade's pansexuality that's played for laughs, but laughs a little bit more with us than at us. Things get more complicated, though, when Logan fastballs his way into the mix. After auditioning a number of Wolverines, Deadpool finally settles on the worst one of all, but not before the bartender asks them if they're going to F or fight. Maybe the bartender saw the posters too. But alas, it's not meant to be. Despite Logan enjoying a polyamorous throuple with Jean and Cyclops in the comics, and yes, that's the original Logan, not an alternate version, this movie is far more interested in the pair fighting than effing. Well, that's what people wanted to see, the fighting, not the other thing. Though that's not due to a lack of interest on Deadpool's part. When a magnet presses their unconscious bodies together, face to face, Logan remarks not all of Deadpool was asleep before he regained consciousness. That's not to say Deadpool and Wolverine need to go the whole hog and make the beast with two backs on screen, whatever that means, but it sounds a little bit outrageous. But it seems like this, or when Wade holds hands with shirtless Logan to save everyone at the end, it's still playing into this notion that they're kind of gay, but also not. Okay, Deadpool is definitely into Wolverine's grisly abs, but it's all handled in a very roundabout way that tentatively hints at queerness with the occasional line or gag without ever really committing to anything. Because that's acceptable as humor. Because people can laugh at that even if they're not interested in doing that or attracted to that or want to be involved with that. It still is interesting to them. And for anyone else who is also interested in that, that's their business and they can see it the way they want to see it. Art is creative expression. Not everyone sees art the same way. That's actually what makes it art. The fact that it's creative expression and the fact that it's up to interpretation. It's better than the quote gay marketing would have you believe. But when the gayest thing in your movie is actually a Madonna needle drop, it's hardly worth celebrating. That's particularly disappointing given how Deadpool 2 was the first mainstream superhero movie to include an LGBT romance. 6 years on, Negasonic teenage warhead and her girlfriend Yukio are heavily sidelined in this movie aside from a couple of throwaway lines at the beginning and the end. Instead of improving on their relationship, moving beyond lip service to include the same kind of kissing or even hand-holding that Wade enjoyed with Vanessa, Deadpool and Wolverine removes these lovebirds almost completely. You wouldn't even know they're queer if you hadn't seen the previous movie. Unfortunately, the same could be said for Deadpool himself even now. For a character who's anything but subtle, it's still rather damning that bigots who feel threatened by queerness could write off Deadpool's gayest moments as a joke befitting of such a quirky character. It is a joke and it is funny and the character is not a real person and they can decide to do whatever they want to do with a character that they own the rights to. But what they also can't do is expect that fans, which surprisingly no one is calling toxic. I'm not hearing anything about toxic fans as fans go out. And even though Marvel has burned fans again and again and again, and not just Marvel, the same company that owns Marvel, Disney, has burned people with Lucasfilm, like year after year after year after year. And they even burned up Pixar, which fans like me that were interested in Marvel and were interested in the classic Star Wars franchise, we're cool with Pixar, but we weren't that into Pixar. But they even burned up Pixar and they even burned up their Disney animation brand, all to push their agenda. What the fans want is the promise that the brand represented. Deliver on the brand, deliver on the promise, everyone's cool. But I don't hear that term toxic fandom going around very much, or toxic fans going around like it was just a couple of weeks ago because people weren't accepting their nonsensical version of Star Wars called The Acolyte. He continues, we're at a point now when Deadpool movies can openly mock the MCU and its dying multiverse plan. Quote, the gays told us, but we didn't listen. Yet they still don't have the balls to go that extra mile and make Wade unquestionably queer beyond any shadow of a doubt. And could you imagine that board meeting? And could you imagine the financial analysts that were like, look, you had this opportunity with Deadpool and you had to utilize that opportunity to make the character gay. And why would you do such a thing and actually blow up the Deadpool franchise, an incredibly profitable franchise they acquired from Fox? And then at the same time, blow up another franchise they acquired from Fox, Wolverine, which could actually save the entire Marvel universe if they do it properly over at Disney. Sure, Marvel Jesus may have saved the MCU, or at least forestalled its demise, but hesitating to be bold in areas where it really matters is a mistake of biblical proportions. That's always going to be true regardless of how much money Deadpool and Wolverine ends up making at the box office. The mistake of biblical proportions is to expect a comic book movie to go off-brand, abandon all of its fans, to satisfy your own personal fantasies. The movies, the products, the intellectual property really belongs to the fans. If you don't make something that the fans like, the real fans, not the people that want to see themselves in it, the people that are interested in the characters, and in a lot of cases have been interested in these characters for years, those are the people that really culturally own the intellectual properties. If you don't serve those fans, the brands wither and die over time. No one can possibly know what Marvel and Disney will do next. After this success has come out, though, Disney is not in a position to really go the other direction anymore. They've lost so much money. They've damaged their brand so much. And their stock has not been doing well lately. So you've got this new successful movie from Pixar, Inside Out 2, breaking an all-time record for any animated movie anytime. And now this new resuscitation, this second life for Marvel. But at the same time, Disney's stock isn't actually doing well right now, because one successful movie is not going to change their financials all that much. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.